To Sarah, the love of my life, my covenant companion, and the one who has taught me more about grace, patience, and joy than any book ever could. To our children, who remind me daily that the legacy of love we build in marriage reaches far beyond ourselves. And to every couple who picks up this book, whether newlyweds or celebrating decades together, may these pages remind you that true love is not found in perfection, but in the daily choice to keep walking, keep forgiving, and keep building together. Chapter 1. The First Spark. Why we fall in love and what makes it real versus infatuation. The story of David and Melissa. David first noticed Melissa at a mutual friend's backyard barbecue. She wasn't the loudest person in the crowd, or the one telling the biggest stories. She was sitting at a picnic table, laughing softly at something a child had said. For David, that laugh caught him like a hook. He found himself drifting toward her, not with a rehearsed line or a dramatic gesture, but with a question about the book she was holding. One conversation turned into another, and before the evening ended, David felt something shift inside him. It wasn't just attraction, it was connection. Years later, when David and Melissa faced hardships, losing a job, caring for a sick parent, late nights with newborn twins, they both admitted there were times the spark seemed dim. But when they looked back, it was that first spark that reminded them, this is the person I chose, the person worth fighting for. The spark that starts it all. Every marriage begins with a spark. For some, it's a glance across a crowded room. For others, it's a conversation that lingers long after midnight, or the accidental brush of hands that sends a jolt through your chest. The spark is that mysterious, electric moment when our hearts awaken to the possibility of love. But here's the truth. Not every spark is the same. Some flare brightly and fade to ash. Others grow into steady flames strong enough to guide two people through the storms of life. The difference? Infatuation versus love. Infatuation, the rush that fades. Infatuation is thrilling. It's the butterflies in your stomach, the constant texts, the rush of adrenaline at the sound of their name. Infatuation feels intoxicating, but it thrives on fantasy, on who we imagine the other person to be, not who they truly are. It's like building a fire with dry leaves. It flares quickly, hot and bright, but dies just as fast. When reality appears, and it always does, infatuation often collapses under the weight of imperfection. Love, though, is different. It begins with the spark, but it doesn't stop there. Love grows deeper. It looks at imperfection and chooses to stay. Love is not blind, it is brave. Where infatuation pulls away when flaws are revealed, love leans closer. It doesn't ask, how do I feel right now, but who are we becoming together? Think of it like a fire built with oak logs. It may take longer to ignite, but once it burns, it warms steadily and endures. Why the spark still matters. The spark is not meaningless. It's the starting point, the moment two paths cross in a way that changes everything. But a marriage that lasts isn't built on sparks alone. It's built on choices, daily, ordinary, deliberate choices, to forgive, to serve, to notice, to encourage. Infatuation may light the match, but only love keeps the fire alive. Reflection. A question for you both. Think back. What was your spark? Was it a smile, a laugh, a glance, or a moment of unexpected conversation? Share that memory with one another. Then ask, how has that spark grown into something deeper over time? Pillar practice number 1. Remember the spark. Step 1. Together, set aside 10 minutes tonight. Each of you shared the story of when you first noticed the other, what you drew in, what moment made you think, this is different. Step 2. Write that memory down in a journal you both keep. Title it, Our First Spark. Step 3. Whenever you feel distant or weary, revisit that page together. Let it remind you why your story began and why it's worth continuing. Key pillar. Every marriage begins with a spark. Infatuation fades, but true love endures. Lasting marriages are built not only on the first spark, but on the daily choice to tend the flame with patience, forgiveness, and commitment.
Chapter 2. Choosing covenant, not contract. Choosing covenant, not contract. Marriage as a sacred bond, not a business deal. The promise beyond paper. The story of James and Lila. James and Lila had been married for 8 years when the cracks began to show. Their arguments had grown louder, their silences colder. One evening, after another argument about money, James threw out the words that had been simmering in his heart. Maybe we should just get a divorce. Lila froze, not because she hadn't thought the same thing, but because she realized in that moment that James saw their marriage as a contract, something he could rip up when the terms no longer felt favorable. That night, Lila pulled out their wedding album. As she lit through the photos, she remembered the vows they had spoken. Not once had they promised, I'll stay as long as it works for me. They had promised forever. The next morning, Lila placed the album on the kitchen table. James, she said softly, we didn't make a contract. We made a covenant. I need you to see the difference. It was a turning point, not a magic fix, but the first step in changing the way they saw their marriage, from something disposable to something sacred. The difference between a contract and a covenant. Too many couples treat marriage like a business deal. Contracts are based on terms and conditions. If one side fails, the agreement can be broken. A contract says, I'll do my part if you do yours. But a covenant says, even if you fail, I will remain faithful. That's why marriage is so different from any other relationship. It isn't just two people agreeing to share a house, bills, or last names. It's a sacred vow that binds hearts, souls, and futures together before God and witnesses. A contract says, I'll keep my promise as long as you keep yours. If you break the terms, I'm free to walk away. That's why businesses run on contracts. They need protection. But a covenant says, I will keep my vow even when it costs me something. Covenants are not written in ink, but on the heart. They bind two people with sacred trust, not just legal terms. The Bible makes this distinction clear. Malachi 2:14 calls marriage a covenant, not a contract. It says, the Lord was witness between you and the wife of your youth. She is your companion and your wife by covenant. God never designed marriage to be a deal we negotiate. He designed it to be a sacred promise that reflects His own faithfulness to us. Covenant love is rooted in God. Covenant love endures not because people are perfect, but because God is faithful. When two people place Him at the center of their marriage, they build on a foundation that doesn't shift when life gets hard. Ecclesiastes 4:12 says it best. Though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. That third strand, the presence of God, is what transforms a fragile human contract into a sacred covenant. Why contracts fail, but covenants endure. Contracts are conditional. They end when expectations aren't met. Covenants are unconditional. They endure even when life gets messy. Contracts are written on paper. Covenants are written on hearts. Contracts protect self-interest. Covenants protect the relationship. This doesn't mean couples ignore problems, but in a covenant marriage, problems are faced together, not as a reason to quit. The trap of contract thinking in couples therapy. Many couples turn to therapy when their marriage feels fragile. While counseling can offer tools for communication, too often the focus slips into scorekeeping. Each spouse lists grievances, unmet needs, and disappointments, as though marriage were a contract where both sides negotiate better terms. This is why couples therapy, for many, becomes the first step towards divorce, rather than reconciliation. It conditions both partners to think, what am I not getting out of this deal? Instead of, how can I remain faithful to my covenant? When marriage is reduced to a ledger of wins and losses, no one wins. True healing begins not when both sides tally their hurts, but when both lift their eyes to a higher calling, seeing marriage not as a contract to be renegotiated, but as a covenant to be renewed. Therapy that focuses only on individual fulfillment risks pulling couples further apart. What saves a marriage is a shift in perspective, away from temporary happiness toward eternal purpose. When couples return to the eternal weight of their vows, for better or worse, in sickness and in health, they discover that lasting love is less about what you get and more about what you give. Living out a covenant marriage. A covenant marriage isn't about never struggling. It's about choosing to love even in the struggle. It's about saying, I will keep showing up even when I'm tired. I will forgive even when I feel hurt. I will stay faithful even when tempted otherwise. I will love even when it costs me something. Contracts may protect, but covenants transform. God as the third partner. The strength of a covenant marriage comes from its third partner, God himself. Ecclesiastes 4:12 reminds us, a threefold cord is not quickly broken. When God is invited into the union, the marriage is bound with a power stronger than human resolve. That power sustains when feelings falter, when trials press heavy, and when the years bring unexpected burdens. President Gordon B. Hinckley said, marriage is not a contract that can be terminated at will. It is a sacred covenant, a solemn and binding promise. Reflection. A question for you both. Sit together and ask, are we treating our marriage as a covenant or a contract? Do we keep mental score of who gives more, or do we see our lives as one shared story? Do we love out of convenience or out of commitment? Do we invite God into our marriage as the third strand, or are we trying to hold it together on our own strength? A reflection for you and your spouse. Think back to your wedding day. What promises did you make? Were they based on feelings or on commitment? Ask each other, do we see our marriage as a covenant, or are we slipping into treating it like a contract? Pillar practice number 2, renewing the covenant. Tonight, set aside 15 minutes together. Pull out your wedding vows or write new ones if you don't have them handy. Each of you write a single sentence that expresses what your covenant means to you today. For example, I promise to choose you every day, even when it's hard. Read your sentences aloud to one another, write them on a note card, and place it somewhere visible on a nightstand, bathroom mirror, or refrigerator as a daily reminder. Key pillar. Marriage is not a contract of convenience. It is a covenant of commitment, a vow to remain faithful even when life tests the terms. Contracts are about conditions. Covenants are about commitment. A marriage that lasts is built not on negotiations, but on sacred promises, rooted in God's love and strengthened by His presence.
Chapter 3. Shared Dreams. Aligning Your Futures. The story of Alex and Rachel. Alex and Rachel had been married for 6 years when they realized something unsettling. They weren't walking in the same direction anymore. Alex had been pouring his energy into starting a business, working late nights and sketching out ideas on napkins at the dinner table. Rachel, meanwhile, had been dreaming about missions work, feeling pulled toward a life of service overseas. Neither dream was wrong, but they were moving parallel instead of together. Conversations about the future grew tense. What began as whispered dreams on their honeymoon now sounded like competing agendas. "You're chasing your thing, and I'm chasing mine," she said one evening. "When do we chase our thing?" That question stopped Alex cold. He realized their marriage couldn't thrive if their dreams were siloed. They needed alignment, not competition. Why dreams matter in marriage. In the beginning, marriage is often fueled by passion, attraction, and shared moments. But over time, what sustains a marriage is not just love, it's direction. Dreams give direction. Without them, couples wander. With them, they move forward together, building not just a life, but a legacy. The world often teaches us to chase personal fulfillment. Follow your heart, pursue your dream, don't let anyone hold you back. While that advice sounds empowering, it can be devastating inside a marriage. Two people chasing separate dreams will inevitably drift apart. But a covenant marriage asks a deeper question. What is God calling us to build together? Shared dreams don't mean you'll agree on every detail. They mean you share a direction, a compass, a purpose. If a husband dreams of a Christ-centered home while his wife pursues only worldly success, or if a wife feels called to nurture while her husband refuses responsibility, conflict is inevitable. But when dreams are aligned, even storms become opportunities to grow stronger together. Common deal breakers couples must consider. Faith and spiritual beliefs. Will we worship together? How central is faith in our home, parenting, and lifestyle? If one longs to raise children in church and the other rejects faith altogether, it creates division at the core. Finances and stewardship. How do we handle money? Saving versus spending. Debt versus financial freedom. Generosity versus self-indulgence. Marriage struggles multiply when one is chasing financial discipline and the other is addicted to debt. Intimacy and expectations. What do we believe about physical intimacy? Frequency, faithfulness, purity, and even openness and communication about needs must be on the same page. Misalignment here leads to resentment and isolation. Family and children. Do we both want children? How many? How will we raise them, discipline them, and educate them? Few fractures cut deeper than when one spouse longs for children and the other refuses. Lifestyle values. What kind of life do we want to live? City versus country, modest versus extravagant, simplicity versus status-driven. These values shape daily life and long-term direction. Roles and responsibilities. What does marriage partnership look like to us? Expectations around careers, homemaking, leadership, and decision-making should be discussed clearly to avoid unspoken disappointments. Extended family and boundaries. How involved will parents, siblings, or in-laws be in our lives? A lack of unity here often leads to years of conflict if not addressed before marriage. Health and lifestyle habits. Do we share convictions around diet, exercise, substance use, or overall health? These habits affect energy, priorities, and even longevity together. Vision and purpose. What do we believe our life is for? Are we chasing the same kind of legacy, whether it's building a family, serving a cause, creating a business, or living a quiet, faithful life? The key distinction. The key to a strong covenant marriage is learning to distinguish between movable dreams and deal-breaker dreams. Movable dreams, like vacations, hobbies, or career changes, can bend and adjust. Deal-breaker dreams, faith, finances, intimacy, children, lifestyle, roles, family boundaries, health, and purpose must align. Wise couples talk through these before marriage and revisit them often. Because while movable dreams make life colorful, deal-breaker dreams determine whether the covenant stands or crumbles. Values that guide in the storm. Storms will come. finances will strain, children will struggle, health will falter. But when a couple has aligned values, they don't have to renegotiate their foundation each time life gets hard. Christ taught, "And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew, and beat upon that house, and it fell not, for it was founded upon a rock." That rock is Christ, and marriage is founded on Him, with shared faith, vision, and values, can withstand the fiercest storms. Building shared purpose. Here are ways couples can intentionally align their dreams. Pray together about the future. Invite the Spirit into your decisions. Set goals as a team. Financial, spiritual, family, and service goals should be discussed openly and often. Talk about values early and often. Honesty, kindness, forgiveness, and faith are not assumed. They must be spoken and lived. Revisit the dream. Life changes. Revisit your shared vision regularly so that it evolves with your family and circumstances. When a couple sees marriage not as two individuals pursuing separate lives, but as two souls united in a sacred mission, their marriage gains resilience and meaning. Reflection for couples. Have we discussed our long-term vision as a couple, not just our short-term goals? Do our values align when it comes to faith, family, and service? Are we intentional about revisiting and nurturing our shared purpose, especially during transitions or trials? Key pillar. Shared dreams transform marriage from a daily routine into a sacred mission. When couples align vision, values, and purpose, before the storms come, they build a bond that weathers adversity and shines as a light to their family and to God.
Chapter 4. Communication is oxygen. Communication is oxygen. How honesty and listening keep love alive. Mark and Emily had been married for 6 years when they realized they were speaking two different languages. Emily longed for conversation. She wanted to talk about her day, her feelings, her fears. Mark, on the other hand, avoided conflict and shut down when things got tense. Whenever Emily pressed harder, he withdrew further, and she felt invisible. Their marriage wasn't collapsing in loud fights. It was suffocating in silence. One evening, after another long argument that ended in distance, they sat down with a counselor who said something that changed their marriage. Communication is like oxygen. Without it, your relationship cannot survive. That image struck them. Just like lungs cannot thrive without air, love cannot thrive without honest words and careful listening. For the first time, Mark and Emily understood that communication wasn't optional. It was life itself for their marriage. The power of words. The scriptures remind us, "A soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger." Words have creative power. They can build intimacy or tear it down. They can breathe life into a relationship or choke it with neglect. Couples who learn to speak gently, honestly, and often are couples who thrive. Why do men and women differ in communication? One of the greatest misunderstandings in marriage is that husbands and wives often approach communication from different starting points. These differences are not laws. They are part of how God designed us. But if not understood, they can cause deep frustration. Women often seek connection through words. Talking is a way to bond, to share feelings, and to process thoughts. For many wives, conversation itself is intimacy. It creates closeness and reassurance. Men often seek solutions through words. Many husbands feel that the purpose of communication is to fix a problem, provide an answer, or move toward action. Long discussions without a clear resolution can feel overwhelming or even pointless to them. The result is wives may feel unheard when husbands rush to fix instead of listen, while husbands may feel pressured when wives seek long conversations without a clear solution. Neither approach is wrong. They're both incomplete without the other.
Marriage communication thrives when men learn that listening is sometimes more valuable than fixing. Women learn that brevity and clarity can help their husbands engage, and both learn to honor the other's style instead of resenting it. Paul taught that husbands and wives are heirs together of the grace of life. That means differences are not barriers. They are complementary strengths when guided by love. The listening that heals. True communication isn't just about speaking. It's about listening. James counsels us to be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. Listening means more than waiting for your turn to talk. It means setting aside defensiveness, seeking to understand, and honoring your spouse's heart even when you disagree. Many marriages could be saved if couples learn to listen with the intent to understand, not just to respond. Breathing life into your marriage. Here are 3 practical ways couples can bring oxygen back into their marriage through communication. The daily check-in. Spend at least 10 minutes each day sharing about your day. One speaks, the other only listens, then switch. Speak life, not death. Commit to eliminating criticism, sarcasm, and contempt from your conversations. Replace them with kindness and encouragement. Pray together. Prayer is a sacred form of communication. When couples pray aloud together, they invite the Spirit to soften hearts and guide their words. Practice. This week, try the 10-minute talk rule. Each day, set aside 10 minutes where one of you shares openly and the other only listens without interruption. The next day, switch roles. This simple practice can revive intimacy and rebuild trust. Reflection questions. Do I make my spouse feel heard, or do I shut them down with defensiveness? Are there unspoken thoughts or feelings I've been avoiding that need to be shared? Does the way I speak breathe life into my marriage, or does it take the oxygen out of the room? Reflection for couples. Do I feel safe sharing my deepest thoughts and feelings with my spouse? When my spouse speaks, do I truly listen, or am I preparing my response? Do we set aside intentional time to talk, not just about tasks, but about hearts? Key pillar. Just as the body cannot live without oxygen, a marriage cannot live without communication. Honesty gives love authenticity. Listening gives love depth. Together, they keep the flame of love alive. Without oxygen, love suffocates. Without communication, marriage does too. Honest words and listening ears are the breath that keeps love alive.
Chapter 5. Forgiveness early and often. Forgiveness early and often. Building habits of grace from the start. Sarah loved her husband deeply, but she carried a quiet resentment. A year earlier, he had forgotten her birthday. He apologized at the time, but deep down, she never truly let it go. Every time he disappointed her in some small way, forgetting to take out the trash, showing up late to dinner, that old hurt whispered in her heart, he doesn't really care. It wasn't the forgotten birthday that poisoned their intimacy. It was the unwillingness to forgive. Over time, Sarah realized the bitterness she carried had become far heavier than the mistake itself. Forgiveness is not just for the great betrayals of life. It is for the daily disappointments, misunderstandings, and unkind words. Couples who learn to forgive early and often build marriages filled with peace. Couples who delay forgiveness or withhold it allow bitterness to build walls where love should be. Why forgiveness matters. Every marriage is made up of 2 imperfect people. That means forgiveness is not optional, it is essential. Without it, every wound becomes a scar, every scar a wall, and every wall a barrier to intimacy. Paul taught, "Be ye kind one to another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God for Christ's hath forgiven you." If Christ can forgive us of our sins, surely we can extend grace to the one we have covenanted to love above all others. The cost of delay. Think of forgiveness like removing a splinter. If taken out quickly, the wound heals cleanly. If left in, it festers. Small offenses left unresolved become larger than the original hurt. Early forgiveness says, "I value peace more than pride." Delayed forgiveness says, "I value being right more than being close." Jesus taught Peter that we must forgive 70 times 7, not because our spouse will never fail, but because our hearts will never stop needing the cleansing power of grace. Forgiveness as a daily habit. Couples who last do not wait until wounds grow deep before they forgive. They make forgiveness part of daily life. They apologize quickly, without excuses. They forgive sincerely, without keeping score. They release bitterness, remembering that one day they will need forgiveness too. Elder Dieter Uchtdorf said, "When it comes to our own prejudices and grievances, we should be quick to forgive. We should not expect perfection in our spouse, but instead offer grace." Forgiveness is not weakness. It is strength. It takes courage to say, "I was wrong," or "I forgive you." But every act of forgiveness builds a stronger foundation for love. Practice. This week, schedule a forgiveness reset. Sit down with your spouse and ask, "Is there anything I've done recently that hurt you? Is there anything you are holding on to that I need to make right?" Then, offer one thing you're choosing to release. Say the words aloud. "I forgive you." Over time, these small resets prevent walls from forming and keep your love tender, free, and alive. Reflection questions. Am I quicker to defend myself than to apologize? Do I silently hold grudges instead of releasing them? Do I forgive as readily as I hope to be forgiven? Key pillar. Forgiveness is not a one-time act. It is a daily habit. Couples who forgive early and often protect their marriage from bitterness and keep love tender, free, and alive.
Chapter 6. Building a Family Identity. Family roots and new branches, navigating in-laws, traditions, and building your own family identity. Kyle and Anna loved each other deeply, but every Thanksgiving became a battlefield. Kyle's parents insisted the family always gather at their house, while Anna's parents expected them to come to theirs. For years, Kyle and Anna tried to please both, driving long hours, splitted holidays, and ending up exhausted. By the third year of marriage, the tension had boiled over. Instead of enjoying the holiday, they were dreading it. One evening, Anna finally said, "We love our families, but if we don't start making our own traditions, we'll always feel torn." Kyle agreed. That year, they hosted Thanksgiving in their own home. Both families were invited, but what mattered most was that Kyle and Anna chose to grow their own branch while still honoring their roots. The balance of roots and branches. Every couple brings their own family history into marriage, traditions, expectations, and habits. These roots are not to be despised. They give us identity and grounding. But marriage is also about growing a new branch, a unique household with its own rhythm and identity. The Lord declared in Genesis 2:24, Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. To leave doesn't mean abandoning family, it means shifting loyalties. The covenant of marriage takes precedence. Couples who fail to establish their own identity often feel stretched thin, living under the weight of two households instead of one. Navigating in-laws with grace. In-laws can be a source of great blessing or great strain. Many marriages falter not because of direct conflict between husband and wife, but because of unspoken tension with extended family. The key is unity. Honor, but prioritize. Respect your parents, but your first loyalty is to your spouse. Present a united front. Don't let parents pit you against each other. Agree privately, then speak publicly as one. Set boundaries early. Boundaries are not walls. They are fences that protect love. President Spencer W. Kimball once counseled, "Your marriage life should become independent of your parents. You love them and cherish their counsel, but the decision-making is yours." Creating your own traditions. Healthy couples do not erase their past, they build upon it. Traditions are a powerful way to shape family identity. Keep some. Choose traditions from your family of origin that bring joy and meaning. Adapt others. Modify old traditions so they reflect who you are as a couple. Create new ones. Establish rituals of your own. Friday night pizza, Sunday walks, holiday rituals, or bedtime prayers. These traditions become the glue that bonds your children to your home and your marriage. Building a family identity. Joshua declared, "As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." Every couple needs a clear sense of identity. Who are we? What do we value? A strong family identity might sound like, we are a family who serves together. We are a family who prays before meals and bedtime. We are a family who laughs often and forgives quickly. When storms come, and they always will, your family's identity provides strength and direction. Practice. This week, sit down together and write a family mission statement. Answer 3 questions. What do we want our home to feel like? What values do we want to pass down to our children? What traditions will help us live these values? Hang it in your home as a reminder of who you are becoming together. Reflection questions. Do we honor our parents while prioritizing each other? Have we been intentional about creating our own family identity? If someone asked, "What is your family known for?" would we have a clear answer? Key pillar. Healthy marriages honor family roots while growing their own branches. In-laws and traditions matter, but the covenant couple must create their own family identity, one that reflects love, unity, and faith in God.
Chapter 7. Money and the Marriage Bed. Money and the marriage bed, 2 of the biggest fights, and how to face them with unity. Brian and Chloe had been married for 3 years when the cracks began to show. At first, it was about money. Brian wanted to save aggressively for a house, while Chloe felt starved of joy because she longed to travel and make memories while they were young. They argued after every credit card statement. Then, slowly, intimacy became another sore spot. Stress from their financial fights left them drained. Chloe felt unloved when Brian pulled away physically, and Brian felt unwanted when Chloe rejected his advances. The 2 issues fed each other in a cycle of resentment. One night, after another fight over bills, Chloe said, with tears in her eyes, "It feels like we're not even on the same team anymore." That was the turning point. They began to realize that money and intimacy, the 2 most common sources of conflict in marriage, were not enemies to fight over. They were sacred trusts that required unity. Why money becomes a battle. Jesus taught, "For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. Matthew 6:21. Money is more than numbers. It reflects priorities, values, and even fears. One spouse may see money as security, the other as freedom. Unless couples learn to see finances as a shared stewardship, money easily becomes a wedge. Keys to financial unity: transparency, no secrets. Hidden accounts or spending destroy trust. Shared goals: agree on priorities, saving, giving, investing, or enjoying. Stewardship mindset: remember that all belongs to the Lord. You are managing His resources, not just your own. When couples pray over finances together, money shifts from a battleground to a mission. Why intimacy becomes a battle. Paul taught, "The wife hath not power of her own body, but the husband. And likewise also the husband had not power of his own body, but the wife." This verse isn't about control. It's about consecration. Intimacy in marriage is a holy union of body, mind, and spirit. Yet many couples allow stress, fatigue, or unspoken hurt to rob them of its power. Problems arise when intimacy is withheld as punishment, it is demanded without tenderness, needs go unspoken out of fear or shame. Sacred intimacy should be approached with vulnerability, compassion, and joy. It is not merely physical. It is a spiritual glue that binds two souls. Facing these fights with unity. Talk openly. Silence only deepens division. Create safe space to discuss finances and intimacy without shame or judgment. Pray together. Ask the Lord to bless your stewardship and sanctify your physical union. Trade sides. Each take time to argue the other's perspective on money and intimacy. It builds empathy. Plan both. Just as you budget money, budget time and energy for intimacy. Both require intentionality. Practice. This week, set aside 2 sessions as a couple. Budget meeting. Pray together, review income and expenses, and agree on one shared financial goal. Intimacy meeting. Share one hope, one fear, and one joy about your intimate life. End by affirming your love for each other. Reflection questions. Are we transparent with each other in money matters? Do we view intimacy as sacred or as a chore or bargaining chip? Do we approach these issues as opponents or as partners on the same team? Key pillar. Money and intimacy are 2 of the most common battlegrounds in marriage, but when couples approach them with honesty, humility, and unity, they transform from points of conflict into cornerstones of trust, tenderness, and lasting love.
Chapter 8. When Romance Fades. Rekindling Passion in Long Seasons. Mark and Elena had been married for 12 years. In the early days, their romance felt effortless. Late-night drives, surprise flowers, stolen kisses in the kitchen. But over time, bills, work deadlines, and kids' soccer schedules began to crowd out the passion. Elena confessed one evening, "I don't feel pursued anymore. I feel like we're just roommates." Mark felt defensive at first. "We're busy. Isn't that just what happens?" But deep down, he knew the spark that once defined their marriage had dimmed. It wasn't that love was gone. It was simply buried under the weight of routine. Like a fire left untended, their romance hadn't burned out, it had grown cold from neglect. Why romance fades? Romance rarely disappears suddenly. Instead, it fades slowly as couples focus more on surviving life than savoring each other.
Infatuation gives way to reality. The early rush of excitement cannot sustain itself forever. Busyness crowds out connection. Work, children, and responsibilities take center stage. Neglect replaces pursuit. Small acts of kindness and intimacy slip away when effort is no longer intentional. Jesus warned the church at Ephesus, "Nevertheless, I have somewhat against thee, because thou hast left thy first love." The same warning applies to marriage. Romance doesn't fade because it was never real. It fades because it was left untended. Rekindling passion through intentional pursuit. The good news is this: romance can always be rekindled. Just as a fire responds to new logs, love responds to intentional effort. Pursue again. Remember how you won your spouse's heart, and do those things again. Prioritize time. Schedule mini dates without phones, kids, or distractions. Surprise often. Small acts of thoughtfulness carry more weight than grand gestures. Guard intimacy. Protect space for physical and emotional closeness. President Thomas S. Monson once said, "Never let a problem to be solved become more important than a person to be loved." Romance is less about circumstances and more about choice. Practice. This week, commit to a weekly mini date. It doesn't need to be expensive. Walk around the block, share dessert at home, or play a game together after the kids are asleep. The only rule: no phones, no distractions. Just the two of you. Reflection questions. Have I stopped pursuing my spouse the way I once did? Do I allow busyness to excuse neglect? What one intentional step can I take this week to rekindle closeness? Key pillar. Infatuation fades, but passion can be rekindled through intentional pursuit. Romance is less about being a feeling to be lost and more about a flame to be tended. Chapter 9. Conflict without casualties. Jackson and Priya loved each other, but their fights left scars. Jackson raised his voice when frustrated, while Priya fired back with sharp words she didn't mean. Afterward, both would retreat in silence, each nursing wounds that lingered long after the argument ended. One evening, after a particularly heated exchange over something as trivial as laundry, Jackson realized their pattern was unsustainable. "We're fighting like enemies," he admitted. Priya nodded through tears. "It's not the conflict that scares me, it's the way we fight." That moment became a turning point. They began learning how to disagree without destroying, how to face issues without wounding each other. They discovered that conflict is inevitable, but casualties are not. Why conflict arises? Conflict isn't a sign of a bad marriage. It's a sign that two unique people are living real life together. The danger isn't in the disagreements, it's in the way they're handled. James warns us, "Where envying and strife is, there is confusion and every evil work." James 3:16. When pride rules, conflict escalates into war. When humility rules, conflict becomes an opportunity for deeper intimacy. Fighting fair. Rules for healthy conflict. No insults ever. Words can wound deeper than actions. Once spoken, they are hard to forget. Stay on the issue. Don't bring up past mistakes or unrelated grievances. Take timeouts. When emotions boil over, step back, pray, and return later. Seek understanding, not victory. The goal is resolution, not winning. End with reconnection. A hug, a prayer, or kind words close the door on resentment. Paul reminds us, "Let not the sun go down upon your wrath." Ephesians 4:26. Conflict must not be allowed to harden into bitterness. Practice. This week, agree on a pause button rule. If a fight escalates, either spouse may call for a timeout. No insults, no storming off. The couple steps away, prays individually, then returns when calm. This builds trust that conflicts will not spiral out of control. Reflection questions. Do I fight to win or fight for us? Have my words in conflict ever left scars? What boundaries can we set to keep disagreements from becoming destructive? Key pillar. Conflict is inevitable in marriage, but when handled with humility, respect, and love, it becomes a tool for deeper connection instead of destruction.
Chapter 10. The Weight of Responsibility. The weight of responsibility, sharing the load without resentment. Marcus thought he was doing the right thing by working long hours to provide for his family. 70 hours a week at the office kept the bills paid and the bank account growing. But while Marcus felt like a good provider, Jenna felt like a single parent. She managed the house, the meals, the appointments, and the children, all while holding down a part-time job herself. One evening, after putting the kids to bed alone again, Jenna broke down in tears. "I don't need a bigger paycheck," she whispered. "I need a partner." Her words woke Marcus up. He realized his good intentions had created an imbalance that was crushing his wife. They needed to carry the load together. Why responsibilities become heavy. Responsibilities in marriage are unavoidable. Work, children, bills, chores, church service, and unexpected crises. The problem arises not from the responsibilities themselves, but from how they're distributed. When one spouse feels they're carrying more than their share, resentment creeps in. Moses once felt the crushing weight of leading Israel alone. The Lord counseled him, "Gather unto me 70 men, and I will take of the Spirit which is upon you, and will put it upon them, and they shall bear the burden of the people with thee, that thou bear it not thyself alone." Numbers 11:16-17. God's wisdom for Moses is the same for marriage. No one is meant to carry the whole load alone. Shared burdens build trust. When burdens are shared fairly, two things happen. Trust deepens. Each spouse knows the other will show up. Resentment fades. Frustration turns into partnership when both carry the load. Ecclesiastes 4:9-10 declares, "Two are better than one, because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, the one will lift up his fellow." Marriage is about lifting together. Practical ways to share the load. Divide, don't assume. List out all household tasks, then divide fairly. Don't assume the other will just handle it. Rotate roles. Switch tasks occasionally to understand each other's efforts. Serve willingly. Doing chores or childcare with a loving heart transforms duty into devotion. Practice. This week, each spouse writes down their top 5 responsibilities: household, financial, parenting, or otherwise. Exchange lists,
Then discuss how to balance the load. Adjust roles where necessary to prevent burnout and resentment. Reflection questions. Do I assume my spouse will handle certain responsibilities without appreciation? Am I carrying more than my share, or letting my spouse carry more than theirs? What is one responsibility I can take off my spouse's shoulders this week? Key pillar. Shared burdens build trust. Unequal loads breed resentment. Marriage thrives when both spouses shoulder the weight of life together, walking as partners, not competitors, in love and service.
Chapter 11. Infertility, Illness, and Loss. Infertility, Illness, and Loss when love walks through the valley. Tom and Grace had always dreamed of a big family, but after years of trying, the doctor's words crushed their hopes. "I'm sorry, it may not be possible." What followed was a season of grief unlike anything they had ever known. Grace wept at baby showers, Tom buried himself in work, and both wrestled with silent questions they couldn't fully voice to each other or to God. One night, after a tear-filled argument, Tom finally reached for Grace's hand and whispered, "I don't know why this is happening, but I do know this. I don't want to face it without you." That moment didn't erase their pain, but it reminded them of their covenant. Together, they chose to walk through the valley, hand in hand. Why suffering tests marriage. Illness, infertility, and loss expose vulnerabilities in a marriage. They magnify differences in how spouses grieve, cope, and seek comfort. Some withdraw into silence, while others cry out for connection. The danger lies not in the grief itself, but in the isolation it can create between husband and wife. Isaiah gives us this promise: "When thou passest through the waters, I will be with thee, and through the rivers, they shall not overflow thee." Isaiah 43:2. God's presence does not always remove the trial, but it sustains us through it. Likewise, in marriage, the covenant is not to avoid valleys, but to walk them together. Love that weeps together. Couples who endure trials well understand grief is personal, but healing is shared. Each spouse may mourn differently, but both must make space for the other's journey. Presence matters more than words. Often there are no answers to why, but there is healing in simply being together. Faith anchors the heart. Prayer, scripture, and worship remind us that sorrow is not the end of the story. Paul writes, "Bear ye one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ." Galatians 6:2. Marriage that lasts is built on the willingness to carry grief together. Practical ways to walk through the valley. Talk about the pain. Don't let silence create distance. Even if words are imperfect, honesty brings healing. Pray for each other. Prayer invites God into the grief and unites hearts in faith. Create rituals of healing. Light a candle for a lost child. Read scripture aloud in hospital rooms, or write letters of encouragement. Seek support together. Pastors, counselors, or trusted friends can provide outside strength when your own feels insufficient. Practice. This week,
Write a letter of encouragement to your spouse about one struggle you're currently facing together. Focus not on fixing the problem, but on affirming your commitment. You're not alone. I'm with you. Reflection questions. Do we give each other permission to grieve differently? In times of loss or illness, do we withdraw or draw closer? Have we invited God into our valley, trusting Him to carry us when we cannot carry ourselves? Key pillar. Love deepens when it weeps together. Couples who walk through infertility, illness, and loss with faith and unity discover that sorrow can carve out a deeper capacity for love.
Chapter 12. The Temptation of Escape. Guarding the Marriage from Outsiders. Nathan never intended to betray his wife. It began innocently enough. A coworker who laughed at his jokes, listened when he vented about stress, and made him feel admired again. At first, it was just friendship. But when his wife, Rachel, noticed him guarding his phone and staying late at the office, she knew something wasn't right. One evening, after Rachel confronted him, Nathan broke down. He admitted the emotional connection had gone too far. Though he hadn't crossed every line, he was headed down a dangerous path. With tears and prayer, they chose confession over collapse, honesty over hiddenness. Together, they put guardrails in place to protect their covenant from further harm. Nathan learned a hard truth. Escape looks easier than endurance, but it always costs more than it promises. Why the temptation is real. Every marriage will face seasons of loneliness, disappointment, or unmet needs. In those vulnerable times, the temptation of escape comes knocking through emotional affairs, pornography, overspending, or even fantasizing about what if. Scripture warns, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour. Satan doesn't usually destroy marriages with one dramatic blow. He erodes them slowly through secrecy, divided loyalties, and unchecked temptations. Closing the escape routes. Healthy couples build guardrails, practical and spiritual protections that prevent temptation from taking root. Transparency. Share passwords, phones, and social media accounts. Hiddenness breeds danger. Accountability. Have trusted friends, mentors, or church leaders who ask the hard questions. Boundaries with the opposite sex. Friendly is fine, but private texts, late-night conversations, and emotional dependence are not. Nurture connection at home. Many temptations lose power when emotional and physical intimacy are strong in the marriage. Proverbs 4:23 reminds us, keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. Guarding the heart is an act of covenant love. Chapter 13. Small Acts, Big Impact. Small acts, big impact. Building love in the everyday. Anna often felt invisible. Between caring for the kids, managing the household, and keeping up with work, she longed for some sign that her efforts were noticed. Her husband, Sam, assumed she knew how much he loved her. After all, he worked hard to provide. But one morning, Anna found a simple sticky note on the bathroom mirror. "I love you. I see all you do. Thank you." That little square of paper did more than flowers or expensive gifts ever could. It softened her heart, rekindled her joy, and reminded her she was cherished. From that day forward, Sam made it a habit to leave small notes, wash dishes without being asked, or simply squeeze her hand as he passed by. None of it was extravagant, but together those small acts built a fortress of love. Why the little things matter. Big moments, weddings, anniversaries, vacations are wonderful, but they are rare. The fabric of marriage is woven in the daily, ordinary moments. A kind word, a gentle touch, a short prayer together, a text in the middle of the day. These may seem small, but they accumulate into a deep reservoir of love. Song of Solomon 2:15 warns, "Take us the foxes, the little foxes that spoil the vines." If little neglects can spoil love, then little acts can nurture it. Turning ordinary into sacred. Love is not built on grand gestures, but on consistent kindness. When a spouse feels noticed in the small things, trust and intimacy grow. Consistency builds safety. Predictable acts of kindness remind your spouse they can depend on you. Surprise builds delight. Unexpected gestures bring joy and freshness to marriage. Service builds intimacy. Small sacrifices show that love is more than words, it is action. Jesus taught, "He that is faithful in that which is least is faithful also in much." Luke 16:10. Faithfulness in little things lays the foundation for faithfulness in great things. Practice. This week, commit to one small act of love each day. Ideas include write a note of encouragement, make your spouse's coffee, send a midday text of gratitude, do a household task without being asked. Keep it simple but consistent. Watch how small gestures breathe fresh life into your marriage. Reflection questions. Do I wait for big occasions to show love, or do I invest in the daily moments? What small act speaks love most powerfully to my spouse? Have I grown neglectful of the little foxes that spoil intimacy? Key pillar. Love is not sustained by grand gestures, but by small, daily acts of kindness. The ordinary moments, done with care, become the building blocks of extraordinary marriages. Chapter 14. The Languages of Love. Learning to speak what your spouse hears. Maria adored words. A heartfelt compliment, a handwritten note, or a simple "I love you" filled her tank to overflowing. Her husband, Daniel, on the other hand, showed love through touch, holding her hand, brushing her shoulder as he walked by, or sitting close on the couch. The problem was, Maria felt unloved when Daniel forgot to say affirming words. And Daniel felt rejected when Maria pulled away from physical affection. Both were giving love, but not in the way the other received it. It wasn't until they discovered the concept of love languages that the light came on. They weren't failing each other, they were just speaking different languages. Why love languages matter. Dr. Gary Chapman popularized the idea of 5 love languages: words of affirmation, verbal encouragement, appreciation, or compliments; acts of service, doing helpful tasks that show care; receiving gifts, thoughtful tokens that show love is remembered;
quality time, focused attention without distractions. Physical touch, hand-holding, hugs, or intimacy. Knowing your spouse's love language isn't about putting them in a box. It's about learning how to speak to their heart in a way they naturally hear love. John reminds us of the source. Let us not love in word, neither in tongue, but in deed and in truth. Love must be communicated in ways that reach beyond intention to impact. The danger of speaking only your own language? Many spouses make the mistake of loving their partner the way they prefer to be loved. A husband may buy gifts because that speaks to him, while his wife longs for quality time. A wife may plan hours of togetherness when her husband feels most loved by words of respect and affirmation. The result? Both are giving love, but neither feels loved. Miscommunication of the heart is just as dangerous as miscommunication of words. Learning to speak their language. Identify it. Ask your spouse which acts of love make them feel most cherished. Practice it. Commit to daily expressions in their love language, even if it's not your natural one. Balance it. While you should focus on their primary language, sprinkle in others for variety. Romans 12:10 calls us to this standard. Be kindly affectioned one to another with brotherly love, in honor preferring one another. Love grows deepest when we prefer our spouse's needs over our own. Practice. This week, each spouse identifies their primary love language. Write it down and commit to one intentional action daily in that language. Examples: words of affirmation. Send a text midday. Thinking of you. I'm so grateful for you. Acts of service. Do one chore your spouse usually does. Receiving gifts. Leave a small, thoughtful surprise, favorite snack, flower, or note. Quality time. Put the phone away and give full attention for 15 minutes. Physical touch. Initiate a hug or hand-holding daily. Reflection questions. Do I tend to love my spouse in the way I prefer to receive love or in the way they do? What one small action today could speak directly to their heart? Am I willing to stretch beyond my comfort zone to prefer my spouse? Key pillar. Speaking your spouse's love language is fluency in love. True intimacy grows when you communicate not just with your words, but in the language their heart understands.
Chapter 15. Raising children without losing each other. Keeping marriage first while parenting together. Carla and Steve were devoted parents. From the moment their first child was born, their world revolved around diapers, late-night feedings, and eventually school projects and soccer games. They loved their kids deeply, but somewhere along the way, their marriage quietly drifted into the background. One night, after a long day of chauffeuring between ballet and baseball, Carla turned to Steve and sighed, "Do you realize we haven't had a date, just the two of us, in over a year?" Steve looked at her with equal weariness. "I know. I feel like we're partners in parenting, but not in love anymore." That realization hit them hard. In pouring everything into their children, they had neglected the very relationship that gave their children security in the first place. They needed to recalibrate, not by loving their kids less, but by choosing to love each other more intentionally. The parenting trap. Children are a blessing, but they are also demanding. The temptation for couples is to pour every ounce of energy into kids while giving each other leftovers. Over time, this creates distance, resentment, and even identity loss once the children leave home. The psalmist reminds us, "Lo, children are an heritage of the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is his reward." Yes, children are God's reward, but they are not meant to replace the covenant bond of husband and wife. Why marriage must come first? Children need stability. The healthiest gift parents can give their kids is a strong, loving marriage. Marriage is covenant. Parenting is stewardship. Your spouse is your eternal companion. Your children are entrusted to you for a season. Unity in parenting requires unity in love. When parents nurture their relationship, they parent from strength instead of exhaustion. President David O. McKay once said, "No success can compensate for failure in the home." That success begins with the marriage itself. Practical steps to keep marriage first. Marriage before parenting nights. Schedule at least one date night per month that is sacred. No kids, no parenting talk, just the two of you. United front in parenting. Never let children play one parent against the other. Decide privately, present publicly as one. Daily connection rituals. A kiss goodbye or a nightly prayer keeps the bond alive amid busy schedules. Dream beyond parenting. Regularly discuss your future as a couple after kids leave the home. Practice. This week, schedule one parent-only night. No kids allowed. Go out or stay in after bedtime, but the goal is simple. Enjoy each other's company apart from the responsibilities of parenting. Reflection questions. Have we allowed parenting to replace our marriage covenant? Do our kids see parents who love each other first, or parents who are always drained and distant? What one step could we take this week to put our marriage back at the center of our family? Key pillar. The best gift you can give your children is parents who love each other first. Raising children should deepen your marriage, not replace it.
Chapter 16. Sacred Intimacy. Healing Shame and Deepening Connection. David and Renee had been married for several years, but something always felt off when it came to intimacy. Renee carried shame from her past, while David, unsure of how to approach her gently, often felt rejected. The silence between them grew heavy, and what should have been a place of closeness became an unspoken source of pain. One night, after weeks of tension, David prayed aloud with Renee for the first time about their struggles. Tears fell as they both admitted fears they had never voiced. That moment changed everything. Intimacy was no longer about performance or pressure. It became about honesty, safety, and the presence of God in their marriage bed. They discovered what many couples miss. Intimacy is not just physical. It is emotional, spiritual, and sacred. A second story. Healing after decades. Robert and Elaine had been married for over 30 years. On the outside, they looked like the perfect couple. Church every Sunday, a house full of children and grandchildren, and a marriage admired by many. But behind closed doors, intimacy had been almost non-existent for decades. It began early in their marriage, when Elaine experienced pain during intimacy and quietly withdrew, too embarrassed to talk about it. Robert, feeling unwanted, eventually stopped pursuing. Instead, they poured their energy into raising kids and building careers, convincing themselves that some marriages just don't have that part. But in their late 50s, while attending a marriage retreat at their church, a lesson on intimacy stirred something in them. That night, Robert broke the silence. "I miss being close to you, not just physically, but heart to heart." Elaine wept as she admitted her fears and shame that had lingered for decades. Slowly, with patience, prayer, and counsel, they began to rebuild what had been lost. They learned that intimacy was about more than the bedroom. It was about tenderness, laughter, prayer, and presence. By their 40th anniversary, Robert and Elaine testified that their marriage was more vibrant than it had ever been, not because they had solved everything, but because they had learned to invite God into the deepest places of their union. Their story proves it's never too late to heal. Intimacy as God designed. The world cheapens intimacy, turning it into entertainment or appetite, but God designed it as something holy. It is not merely about pleasure, it is about oneness. Genesis 2:25 describes Adam and Eve. "And they were both naked, the man and his wife, and were not ashamed." God's vision for intimacy is freedom without fear, vulnerability without shame. Barriers to sacred intimacy. Shame from the past. Wounds from sin, abuse, or past relationships can make it hard to embrace intimacy. Stress and exhaustion. Daily life often leaves little energy for connection. Unspoken expectations. Silence or assumptions create misunderstandings. Selfishness. Intimacy breaks down when it becomes about taking instead of giving. 1 Corinthians 7:3 reminds us, "Let the husband render unto the wife due benevolence, and likewise also the wife unto the husband." True intimacy is mutual, selfless, and tender. Building sacred intimacy. Talk honestly. Share your fears, desires, and expectations without shame. Pray together. Invite God into your most private places. Prayer softens hearts and heals wounds. Slow down. Make space for intimacy, emotionally, spiritually, and physically without rushing. Serve each other. Approach intimacy as an act of love, not just desire. President Spencer W. Kimball once said, "In marriage, intimacy is not only physical union, but a union of hearts and lives." Practice. This week, share one vulnerable thought about intimacy with your spouse. It may be a fear, a hope, or a past wound. Pray together afterward, asking God to help you see intimacy as He designed it. Reflection questions. Do I approach intimacy as selfish pleasure or as selfless union? Have I allowed shame, silence, or stress to keep me from deeper connection? Do we invite God into our intimacy or keep Him at a distance? Key pillar. Sacred intimacy binds soul, body, and spirit. When approached with honesty, tenderness, and faith, it becomes not a source of shame, but a holy gift that deepens covenant love, even if it takes years to reclaim.
Chapter 17. Respect in the Ordinary. The Quiet Power of Words and Tone. Jenna never thought much about her tone. When she was tired, she'd sigh heavily. When she was irritated, she'd roll her eyes or mutter under her breath. To her, it was harmless, just little reactions to daily frustrations. But over time, Tom began to feel smaller and smaller in his own home. One evening, he admitted through clenched teeth, "You don't even have to say anything. The way you look at me tells me I've already failed." Jenna was stunned. She hadn't realized how much weight her tone and expressions carried. That night, they promised each other to guard not just their words, but their attitudes. Slowly, Jenna learned to swap eye rolls for encouragement, and Tom learned to respond with patience instead of withdrawal. Their home grew lighter, not because problems disappeared, but because respect had returned. A second story. Respect flows both ways. Respect is not just a wife's duty toward her husband, it flows both directions. Take Ryan and Lily. Ryan loved his wife, but often dismissed her ideas without realizing it. If Lily suggested a new budget plan, he'd wave it off with, "You just don't understand numbers." If she wanted to talk about parenting, he'd reply, "I'll handle it. Don't worry about it." Lily rarely argued, but each dismissal chipped away at her sense of worth. One day, she finally said, "You don't hear me. You don't value what I bring." Ryan was crushed. He hadn't meant to disrespect her. He thought he was protecting her from stress. But in reality, his dismissal communicated that her voice didn't matter. With time, Ryan learned to slow down, listen, and honor Lily's insights. When he began asking, "What do you think?" and truly listening, Lily bloomed. Their marriage grew stronger because Ryan discovered respect is not just for men. It is the language of love every spouse longs to hear. Why respect matters. Respect is oxygen for a husband. Kindness is oxygen for a wife. Both men and women long to feel valued, but they often experience respect differently. Husbands often equate respect with trust, honor, and affirmation. Wives often equate respect with kindness, gentleness, and emotional safety. Paul's counsel to the Ephesians captures this beautifully. Nevertheless, let every one of you in particular so love his wife even as himself, and the wife see that she reverence her husband. Ephesians 5:33. Love and respect are not opposites. They are intertwined. When either is missing, marriage struggles to thrive. The subtle power of tone. Words matter, but tone often matters more. A sharp word said kindly may land softly, but a kind word said sharply may wound deeply. Respect is communicated not only in what we say, but in how we say it. Proverbs 15:1 reminds us, "A soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger." Respect in the ordinary moments through tone, body language, and small courtesies creates extraordinary trust. Practical ways to show respect. Watch your tone. Ask, would I use this voice with a stranger? If not, soften it. Practice courtesy. Simple words like please and thank you carry great power at home. Affirm regularly. Point out what your spouse is doing well instead of focusing only on faults. No sarcasm for a season. Try 1 week where sarcasm is off limits. Notice how it changes the mood. Practice. Commit to 1 week of respect-filled speech. No sarcasm, no eye rolls, no dismissals. Instead, use words of encouragement and tones of kindness, even in conflict. Reflection questions. Do I use a tone with my spouse that I would never use with others?
do I dismiss or belittle my spouse's contributions without realizing it? What one habit of disrespect can I replace with intentional kindness this week? Key pillar. Respect is not built in grand gestures, but in daily tone, words, and attitudes. When husbands and wives both practice respect in the ordinary moments, love deepens and trust grows strong for a lifetime.
Chapter 18. Laughter is glue. Joy as the bond that holds through hardship. Nick and Laura had weathered years of financial stress. Between job losses and unexpected medical bills, their marriage often felt heavy. One night, while sorting through yet another stack of overdue notices, Nick looked at Laura and, with mock seriousness, said, "Well, at least we're broke together. Want to split a peanut butter sandwich, candlelight style?" Laura burst out laughing. The tension broke, and for the first time in weeks, they felt close again. That moment of humor didn't erase their struggles, but it reminded them that joy could live even in hard times. Why laughter matters? Laughter isn't just a luxury. It's glue. It bonds couples in ways few other things can. Humor creates relief, builds intimacy, and reminds us that life is more than bills, chores, and stress. Proverbs 17:22 declares, "A merry heart doeth good like a medicine, but a broken spirit drieth the bones." God wired us to need joy. In marriage, laughter is one of his simplest but most powerful medicines. Husband and wife perspectives. For husbands, many men feel the burden of responsibility. Bills, work, and protecting the family can make life feel heavy. A wife's laughter can remind him that he is more than a paycheck. He is her partner in joy. For wives, many women carry the emotional load of family life, schedules, school projects, daily chores. A husband's humor and playfulness can lift the weight, reminding her that love is not all duty, but delight. Laughter communicates, "We're in this together, and it's okay to breathe." Obstacles to joy. Stress. Worry suffocates laughter if we never step back. Bitterness. Resentment turns joy into sarcasm and cynicism. Busyness. A packed calendar leaves little room for play. Couples must be intentional about protecting joy, just as they protect finances or intimacy. Practice. This week, plan one laughter date. It could be watching a funny movie, playing a silly board game, or simply trying something new and lighthearted. The goal isn't productivity, it's joy. Reflection questions. Do we intentionally make space for laughter in our marriage? Is my humor playful, or does it sometimes cut and wound? When was the last time we laughed so hard together that we forgot the stress around us? Key pillar. Couples who laugh together stay together. Laughter is not an escape from life's burdens, but the glue that binds hearts with joy through every season.
Chapter 19. Empty Nest, Full Hearts. Rediscovering Love After the Kids Leave. Paul and Diane had spent over 25 years raising their children. Their days were filled with practices, school events, late-night talks, and family dinners. Then one fall afternoon, they dropped their youngest off at college. The drive home was quiet. The house that had once been buzzing with activity now felt too still. That first week, Diane confessed, "I feel lost. Who am I if I'm not a full-time mom? Paul, equally unsettled, said, I don't even know what we're supposed to do with ourselves now. For years, their identity had been wrapped up in parenting. Now they had to relearn how to be husband and wife, not just mom and dad. It wasn't easy, but slowly they found new rhythms. They started taking walks in the evening, they planned weekend trips, they rediscovered the joy of being best friends again. The empty nest, instead of being an ending, became an invitation to build a new chapter, together. A second story. The warning and the hope. Not every couple navigates the empty nest well at first. When Michael and Teresa's last daughter married and moved away, they looked at each other across the dinner table and realized they had nothing left to talk about. For years, their conversations revolved around kids, schedules, homework, sports, and future plans. Now, with no children at home, the silence was deafening. For a season, they drifted apart. Michael buried himself in work and golf. Teresa filled her calendar with church activities and lunches with friends. They weren't fighting, they were simply living parallel lives. Their marriage was coexisting, but not thriving. One Sunday, their pastor preached on marriage, reminding the congregation that love must be chosen daily, in every season. That message pierced their hearts. On the drive home, Teresa broke the silence. I don't want to be strangers for the next 20 years. Michael agreed, and together they decided to rebuild. It wasn't instant, but they began dating again. They asked each other questions they hadn't in years. What are you dreaming about now? What do you want the next season to look like? Slowly, they discovered new common ground. The nest was empty, but their hearts grew full once more. Why the empty nest feels so hard. The transition to an empty nest often feels like grief. Couples may wrestle with loss of purpose. Parenting gave structure and meaning. Now there is silence. Unfamiliar roles. Without kids to buffer, old marital issues may resurface. Loneliness. A quiet home can feel isolating after years of noise and chaos. But what feels like loss can actually be opportunity. Ecclesiastes 3:1 reminds us, to everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven. The empty nest is not the end of family. It is the beginning of a new season of love. Husband and wife perspectives. For husbands, many men see the empty nest as freedom, more time for hobbies, travel, or rest. But if he pursues those without his wife, she may feel abandoned. His call is to invite her into adventure and re-pursue her heart. For wives, many women feel the loss more deeply, especially if their identity has been centered in motherhood. Her call is to rediscover her role as wife, companion, and partner, and to embrace new dreams together with her husband. When both embrace the season, the empty nest can be filled with purpose, intimacy, and joy. Practical ways to reconnect. Dream together again. Create a second-half bucket list of things you want to do as a couple in the next 5 years. Compare lists, find overlap, and choose one to start pursuing now. Reflection questions. Have we let parenting define our marriage more than our covenant? What new adventures or dreams could we pursue in this season? How can we use this quieter stage of life to deepen, not diminish, our love? Key pillar. Empty nests can lead to empty hearts, or to hearts overflowing with renewed love. Couples who choose to rediscover each other in this season find that their marriage, like fine wine, grows richer with time.
Chapter 20. Midlife Challenges, Embracing Change with Grace. Anthony had always been the picture of a driver. For 2 decades, he built his career with relentless energy, climbing the ladder and providing well for his family. But by his late 40s, something shifted. The passion that once fueled him turned to burnout. He came home drained, short-tempered, and numb. At the same time, Rachel was entering menopause. Her body was changing, her emotions sometimes unpredictable, and she often felt misunderstood. Anthony withdrew. Rachel felt abandoned. Both silently wondered, is this the beginning of the end? This is the danger of midlife challenges. If unspoken and unsupported, they drive couples apart at the very season they most need each other's grace. Story 1. The Warning. Mike and Laura hit their midlife season hard. Mike threw himself deeper into work, chasing a sense of worth he feared he was losing. Laura, feeling lonely, filled her evenings with friends and church activities. They weren't unfaithful, but they were no longer together. Eventually, their marriage became polite but hollow. They shared a house, but not a heart. By failing to face midlife struggles together, they let their marriage wither in silence. Story 2. The Hope. By contrast, David and Karen chose a different path. When David confessed he was feeling empty in his career, Karen didn't criticize, she listened. When Karen shared her frustration with hot flashes, mood swings, and fatigue, David chose empathy over withdrawal. Together, they leaned into honesty. They read books on this stage of life, prayed together, and sought counsel from older couples. They didn't fix every problem, but they learned to give each other the gift of patience. Their marriage not only survived midlife, it deepened. Why midlife feels like a storm. Physical changes. Men wrestle with energy and identity. Women face hormonal shifts and emotional waves. Empty nest transition. Children grow independent, leaving couples unsure of their new role. Career pressure or regret. Questions of what's next or did I waste my life often surface. These challenges are real, but they are also invitations to grow. Isaiah 46 verse 4 offers comfort. Even to your old age I am he, and even to hoar hairs will I carry you. I have made and I will bear. Even I will carry and deliver you. God promises to carry us, even when our bodies and circumstances shift. Husband and wife perspectives. For husbands, midlife often challenges identity. If career slows or energy fades, many feel diminished. What they most need is respect, encouragement, and a reminder that their worth is not in performance, but in who they are. For wives, midlife often brings physical and emotional changes that can feel disorienting. What they most need is tenderness, patience, and reassurance that they are still beautiful, desired, and loved. When both extend grace, midlife becomes not a season of loss, but of renewed closeness. Practical ways to face midlife together. Talk honestly. Share the changes you're experiencing instead of hiding them. Prioritize health. Exercise, nutrition, and rest become even more critical in this season. Do it together when possible. Dream again. Revisit old dreams and create new ones. Midlife can be a launching point, not a dead end. Seek mentorship. Learn from couples who've navigated this season faithfully. Practice. This week, ask each other, what has been the hardest part of this season for you? What do you need from me right now? Then pray together, specifically asking God to give you grace for each other's unique midlife challenges. Reflection questions. Do I minimize or dismiss the changes my spouse is experiencing? Am I open about my own struggles, or do I hide them in silence? Are we treating midlife as an ending or as a new beginning? Key pillar. Marriage thrives when couples embrace midlife with grace. The changes of this season are not threats to love, but opportunities to rediscover each other with deeper patience, tenderness, and faith.
Chapter 21. Aging Gracefully Together. Aging gracefully together, leaning on each other through life's later seasons. Robert and Elaine had been married for more than 50 years. Their pace was slower now. Walks around the neighborhood took longer, and Elaine often needed Robert's steady arm for balance. One evening, as they shuffled together down the driveway, Robert chuckled. "Between the two of us, we've got one good back and two strong knees. I guess that makes us a complete set." Elaine laughed, leaned on him a little tighter, and said, "We've always made a good team." That moment captured the beauty of aging gracefully together. It wasn't about denying the changes or pretending they weren't hard. It was about facing them hand in hand with humor, tenderness, and gratitude. Story 1. The Warning. Frank and Linda had also been married for decades, but their later years looked very different. Frank resented the loss of his physical strength, complaining often about getting old. Linda, frustrated by his negativity, withdrew emotionally. Their home grew heavy with silence and bitterness. Instead of leaning on each other, they pushed one another away. The aches, doctor visits, and slower pace became a source of irritation instead of intimacy. By refusing to accept the changes of aging with grace, they let their marriage wither in its final chapters. Story 2. The Hope. By contrast, Harold and June embraced aging as a sacred gift. When Harold's memory began to fade, June responded not with frustration, but with compassion. She would gently remind him of details, hold his hand when he was confused, and choose to see every day as one more opportunity to love. Their children and grandchildren often said, "We've never seen a love like theirs." The tenderness that grew in their later years became the legacy they left behind. Their bodies grew weaker, but their bond grew stronger, proving that aging gracefully is less about health and more about heart. Why aging feels so hard. Physical decline. We can no longer do what we once did, which challenges pride and independence. Loss of roles. Retirement, changing energy, and health struggles can make couples feel useless or overlooked. Fear of the future. Questions about mortality, illness, and what's next can breed anxiety. But the truth is, aging doesn't have to diminish marriage. It can refine it. Isaiah 46:4 offers this promise. "Even to your old age I am he, and even to hoar hairs will I carry you. I have made, and I will bear. Even I will carry and deliver you." God's love does not fade with time, and neither does covenant love when it's nurtured. Husband and wife perspectives. For husbands, aging can feel like a loss of strength and usefulness. What they most need is reassurance that they are still respected, valued, and needed. For wives, aging can feel like a loss of beauty and vibrancy. What they most need is reassurance that they are still cherished, desired, and precious. When both partners choose encouragement over complaint, aging becomes an opportunity to grow
even closer. Practical ways to age gracefully together. Laugh often. Find humor in the quirks of aging. It keeps joy alive. Stay engaged. Pursue small adventures, hobbies, or service, even at a slower pace. Nurture spiritual strength. As physical strength wanes, lean more heavily on God and prayer together. Show tenderness. Simple acts, helping each other up, holding hands, choosing patience, become sacred gifts. Practice. This week, share one dream for your golden years with your spouse. It could be travel, a hobby, mentoring grandchildren, or simply more time together. Then pray, asking God to help you grow old with grace and gratitude. Reflection questions. Do I complain about aging, or do I embrace it with gratitude? Do I reassure my spouse that they are still valued, beautiful, and needed? Am I preparing my heart for the gift of walking with my spouse into life's later chapters? Key pillar. To grow old together is the greatest romance of all. Aging gracefully is not about denying change, but about leaning on each other, laughing through the aches, and loving deeper as the years unfold.
Chapter 22. Legacy of Love. What we leave behind for generations. Harold and June had been married for nearly 60 years. Their grandchildren often said, "When we think of love, we think of them." It wasn't because they were wealthy or left behind great possessions. It was because they left a living memory of tenderness, faith, and unity. Their children remembered how Harold always kissed June before bed. Their grandchildren remembered how June's laughter filled the room. Long after they were gone, their legacy continued shaping hearts. Story 1. The Warning. Charles and Margaret worked hard all their lives. They built wealth, left behind land, and made sure their children were financially secure. But asked their children what they remembered most, and the answer came slowly. The inheritance was significant, but the memories were scarce. Their kids recalled constant tension, sharp words, and a marriage that felt like endurance more than love. Charles and Margaret succeeded at leaving possessions, but they failed at leaving love. The tragedy of their marriage was not in what they gave, but in what they withheld. Story 2. The Hope. By contrast, Harold and June from above left their family something far greater. Their legacy was not measured in dollars, but in devotion. Their children said, "We saw forgiveness in action every day." Their grandchildren said, "We grew up believing in marriage because of them." Their faith in Christ, their prayers for their family, and their quiet affection toward each other became a heritage that outlived them. Even decades later, their love still shaped choices in the lives of their descendants. Why legacy matters. Every couple leaves something behind. The question is not if you will leave a legacy, but what kind. Psalm 78:4 calls us to intentionality. We will not hide them from their children, shewing to the generation to come the praises of the Lord, and to strength and his wonderful works that he hath done. We are called to pass down more than money. We are called to pass down faith, values, and love. Husband and wife perspectives. For husbands, your children and grandchildren watch how you speak to your wife. Every word of tenderness or every word of disrespect teaches them what marriage should look like. For wives, your children and grandchildren watch how you honor your husband. Your kindness, encouragement, and forgiveness model how love survives storms. Together, the daily choices you make become the heritage your family inherits. Practical ways to leave a legacy of love. Live what you preach. Let your actions reflect the values you hope your children and grandchildren will carry. Create traditions. Shared meals, prayers, or family rituals outlast possessions. Speak blessings.
Verbally affirm your children and grandchildren with words of faith, love, and encouragement. Model forgiveness. Let your family see that conflict is not the end of love, it's the beginning of grace. Practice. This week, write a short legacy letter together as a couple. Share your hopes, values, and blessings for your children and grandchildren. Read it aloud and keep it as a family treasure. Reflection questions. Am I more focused on leaving wealth than leaving wisdom? What will my children remember most about our marriage? If my grandchildren could describe our love in one word, what would it be? Key pillar. True wealth is love passed down. A lasting legacy is not found in possessions, but in faith, tenderness, and the daily example of a marriage rooted in covenant love.
Chapter 23. Covenant Renewed. Choosing Love Again. Lisa and Peter stood hand in hand at their 40th wedding anniversary celebration. Their children and grandchildren gathered around as they exchanged vows once more. Lisa's eyes filled with tears as she repeated words spoken decades earlier, for better, for worse, in sickness and in health. Peter, voice trembling, whispered, "I'd choose you all over again." Their marriage hadn't been without storms. There had been seasons of financial strain, years of parenting challenges, and even long stretches where love felt like a choice more than a feeling. But standing there, surrounded by family, they knew the secret. Marriage isn't chosen once. It's rechosen every day. Why renewal matters. Every covenant requires remembering. Just as Israel renewed their covenant with the Lord, so marriages thrive when vows are revisited and reaffirmed. Life changes, circumstances shift, feelings rise and fall, but covenant love remains when couples intentionally renew it. Story 2. The quiet renewal. Not every renewal happens with ceremony. Some happen in quiet kitchens. After a painful season of distance, Mike turned to his wife Teresa one night and said, "I haven't always loved you well, but I want you to know I still choose you. Today, tomorrow, always." That small act of spoken commitment breathed life back into their weary marriage. Renewal doesn't always look like a vow renewal service. It looks like daily choices to stay, to forgive, and to keep walking together. Husband and wife perspectives. For husbands, renewal means more than provision. It means speaking the words again. I love you. I choose you. I will keep choosing you. For wives, renewal means more than endurance. It means offering the gift of forgiveness and reminding him, "You are still my covenant companion." Practical ways to renew your covenant. Revisit your vows. Read them aloud or write new ones for this season. Set a renewal ritual. Annually or on your anniversary, exchange words of recommitment. Celebrate milestones. Mark anniversaries not just with gifts, but with gratitude. Daily words, make it a habit to say, "I'd choose you again." Practice. This week, write a short note of renewal to your spouse. It could be as simple as, "I still do. I still choose you." Place it where they'll find it, on a pillow, in a lunchbox, or on the bathroom mirror. Reflection questions. Do I take my covenant for granted, or do I intentionally renew it? What words of love have I left unsaid that my spouse needs to hear again? How could I mark our anniversary, or even ordinary days, as moments of covenant renewal?
Key pillar. Love is not chosen once, but rechosen daily. A lasting marriage is built on countless renewals of covenant, spoken and unspoken, that echo across the years. I still do.
Chapter 24. Till death do us part, holding fast to the end. Ruth sat quietly beside her husband's hospital bed. His breathing was shallow now. Every rise and fall of his chest reminded her that their time together was nearly over. She held his hand, worn from decades of hard work, and whispered, "We made it. Through every season, every storm, we made it." He squeezed her hand weakly and managed a smile. With tears in her eyes, Ruth leaned close and said the words they had repeated for more than 50 years. "I love you." In that moment, their covenant, spoken as young lovers, tested in hardship, renewed through forgiveness, was complete. Their love story had endured to the final breath. The beauty of finishing well. Every marriage begins with a vow, "Till death do us part." Yet too often couples forget that those words are not simply poetic, they are prophetic. They declare that true love is meant to endure beyond convenience, beyond feelings, beyond time itself. Ecclesiastes 7:8 reminds us, "Better is the end of a thing than the beginning thereof, and the patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit." The wedding day is beautiful, but the final chapter of a faithful marriage is far more powerful. It testifies that love truly can last a lifetime. Story 2. The Hope Beyond Goodbye. After 55 years together, James passed away suddenly, leaving Mary a widow. The grief was heavy, but Mary told her children, "I am not alone. I still carry him with me. His love is stitched into every part of who I am." Though her husband was gone, the legacy of their covenant remained, alive in her faith, in their children, and in her quiet strength. For Mary, "Till death do us part" was not the end of love, but the doorway into eternity. Husband and wife perspectives. For husbands, to finish well means to love faithfully every day so that when the final day comes, your wife can say, "He loved me to the end." For wives, to finish well means to nurture the covenant with patience and grace so that your husband can testify, "She stood by me through it all." Practical ways to build toward the end. Cherish the ordinary. Small daily acts, holding hands, kind words, prayers together, become treasures in memory. Speak your love often. Don't let important words go unsaid. Prepare together. Talk about your hopes for later years, from healthcare to spiritual legacy. Hold eternity in view. Remember that covenant love doesn't end at death. It continues in God's eternal promises. Practice. This week, share one thing with your spouse. If today were our last, this is what I'd want you to remember. Then pray together, thanking God for your love and asking Him to help you finish well. Reflection questions. Do I live each day with gratitude, knowing our time together is finite?
Have I spoken the words of love my spouse most needs to hear? Am I building a marriage that will leave my spouse with peace and not regret at the end? Key pillar. True love outlives time. A lasting marriage is not measured only in days lived together, but in a covenant that endures faithfully till death do us part and beyond.
This has been Marriage That Lasts, the 24-Pillar Foundation, written by Matt Wallace, narrated by Victoria Lane, copyright 2025 by Matt Wallace, production copyright by Matt Wallace.